ladies and gentlemen, JetBlue as the first American carrier landing in Cuba after more than 50 years. Welcome to Santa Clara Airport, where the local time is 10:57.
Hello, and welcome to episode 118 of Dots, Lines, and Destinations. Bad news, y'all. This is Seth hosting, which means it's both going to be terrible and also kind of special. I'm sitting on a rooftop in Santa Clara, Cuba, with our good friend and oft guest, Cynthia Drescher. Hello, Cynthia.
Hello, hello.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I hope
Salud.
Salud. I hope that clink came through. We are finishing up day 2 in Cuba, coming off of the inaugural commercial flight from the United States to Cuba. That was a JetBlue trip. We both took down Fort Lauderdale to Santa Clara, and it's been mostly incredible.
It's been not just mostly, I would say completely.
Yeah. I will give it to you. For those of you who think that we should have a dot, a line, and a destination, our dot will be the Santa Clara International Airport, Abel Santa Maria. The line will be Fort Lauderdale to Santa Clara, and the destination will be mostly Santa Clara, Cuba, with a little bit of other Cuba mixed in.
Yeah,
because
other Cuba,
because we can. If all goes well, this will air on 8th of September 2016. If not, it will air on some other date, because sometimes we have dates and episode stamps, but here we go. We're going to do line first, because the flight was really what this was all about. First commercial air service between the United States and Cuba in 55 years. JetBlue came in, Silver Airways came in, I guess the next day, which would have been today.
Today.
If I'm doing the math right.
Also to Santa Maria.
From
Fort Lauderdale.
We will assume the plane did in fact fly.
Right, we will assume.
Well, here's the thing.
The Wi-Fi hasn't been great.
When we've been willing to pay for it, it has been fine, but at $2 an hour, it costs almost as much as Wi-Fi in airplanes, and that's something I've generally been unwilling to pay for. It's an interesting experience to be sort of this disconnected. I mean, other than, I guess you were headed up to the North Pole recently, so you have this sort of experience, but other than that, have you been this disconnected that long a lot?
I've been disconnected fully in the last 10 years about 3 times.
Yeah.
Other than this, I'd say. So one was recently when I was at the North Pole on a ship for 2 weeks on a old Soviet nuclear icebreaker.
Which is an incredible story.
Yeah, for 2 weeks up to the North Pole from Murmansk, Russia. Before that, I was in the Amazon for 3 days. Like, took a boat to a old VW bus to a boat to another VW bus to a boat. And then out to like some tree houses.
Okay.
Yeah, had absolutely
you did not sleep in the VW bus. I'm glad you got the treehouse out of that.
And there was another instance that I cannot recall right now, but I will think of it in a moment.
I'm sure you will.
Yeah, it was about another week. Oh, yes. I was trekking in the Himalayas.
Right.
On that trail to Everest Base Camp.
Right, which we talked about a little bit. Yeah, so it's different. It is definitely different, but not in a bad way necessarily. I mean, we've been able to connect just enough to keep track of what's going on out there. I mean, you've seen me. I've been stalking my photo of being the first passenger to board that flight entirely too much online.
Seth is a superstar.
That shirt, man. That shirt gets a lot of play. It's been interesting, but I feel like it's been hard to describe the value proposition of that inaugural flight. I've done a number of inaugurals. I know you've done a number. You've done type inaugurals. We were talking earlier. You did the 787 delivery flight.
Every kind of variety that you could think of.
I guess you were on the 748, right?
Yes.
Yes. So we
met
were on
in the lounge.
Yeah, that's right.
The boarding lounge.
I think I was wearing the same shirt.
You definitely were.
That shirt is my dress-up shirt.
And you realize
for
that was like
events. 2012. 4 years ago.
4 years ago.
June 2012.
Okay.
They were bragging about it the other day. Yeah. So we've done a lot of inaugurals. This one felt different to me.
This one had the most press coverage by far.
Absolutely.
Other than like actual aircraft introductions, before the flight, like when you have the first 787 coming out, and you have the press coming to Payne Field, that's different. This was a full flight experience.
Yeah.
And I'd say the flight was more than half full with press, half full with press. Yeah.
No, more than half. Definitely, I would say it's probably was half that just did the turn.
Right. Yeah.
Press and employees.
And big networks, too. I mean, we're not just talking about, like, blogger here and there. I was sitting next to a host from Univision.
Yeah. He was a great guy.
Yeah, I didn't get his name, though. Oops.
Me neither. I did an interview with him earlier, separately from you. Yeah. No, there was, you looked at the lineup of the cameras. It wasn't an event where you just sort of elbowed your way in and took your photos. This was an event where they had spots set up for the different networks.
Right.
And
like the tape on the ground.
Yeah, tape on the ground at the airport in Fort Lauderdale. There was an NBC slot, there was a CNN slot, there was an ABC slot. This was, the AP guy was there, the Agence France Presse was there, all the wire services had representation. This was justifiably treated as a real deal. I feel like. And it was different. And in retrospect, obviously it is. This is the first commercial service between two countries that have been arguably at war, although not declared, for far too long, in my opinion. I'll get a little political here, but sure.
Well, it sounds like Obama agrees.
Yeah, no, it was interesting. During one of the points, someone asked me, why are you doing this? And the easy answer is, I'm not Geeks Inaugural, I have to. Like, there's this instinctive, this sort of visceral feel, I have to be on a first flight if I can.
And the tickets were open and purchasable for anyone who could fit one of the 12 tenets of
if you could fit one of the 12 categories. And they were cheap. We both did this actually on True Blue points.
I did not. I paid.
Did you end up paying?
Yeah, I ended up paying because I can write it off at the end of the year.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I paid, it was $204 total.
Okay.
So $99 each way and then some taxes.
Some taxes, yeah.
Yeah.
I did it on points. I have entirely too many True Blue points, and it seemed like a good idea at the time. In reality, I booked it as a cash ticket first, then canceled it and rebooked it as an award ticket. There are some weird quirks, like booking a one-way out of Cuba is hard. Using the Blue Ink small business portal and booking anything to or from Cuba is hard. So, just so you know. There was some phone calls made to the Mosaic line. There were several phone calls made to the Mosaic line, and employees like, I don't know what you're talking about, Mr. Miller. What do you mean Cuba? We figured it out pretty quickly. I eventually got it booked as an all-reward ticket. But yeah, the point valuation is ridiculously high. So, but during one of the interviews, someone asked me, like, why are you doing this? And the AvGeek answer is obvious, but I also, travel solves problems. Cultural exchange, having more people understand different cultures and experience the other side, so to speak, solves problems. And like many, I feel, cultural and political battles that are going on, this one is all theoretical and has nothing to do with the people who live in either country. Or, I shouldn't say nothing, but minimal amounts. There's pockets of populations. There are absolutely some exiled Cuban Americans who care very deeply about the situation, and there's no doubt in my mind that there are injustices happening in Cuba, but I don't think that isolation is the right solution to that problem.
Well, also, there's the reasoning to go on a trip like this is also just the general fact that we've been getting tons of questions individually from people who are interested in not just Cuba travel, but in, how does, what's it like even over there? Now, why is Obama opening it up so much? And you can, it's something that you can actually indulge in thoughts about.
Sure.
So, I travel all the time. I get questions all the time like, oh, have you been to Iceland? Well, yeah, I've been to Iceland. So how is it? And so I tell them about Iceland. Well,
sure.
I've been getting tons of questions about Cuba. And my answer has been, I don't know when I'm going. I don't know. And this was the absolute perfect time to make that leap.
Yeah. No, I'll give you that. It was a good sort of confluence of circumstances, right? This was, not only was it the first flight, but it also, the timing, the scenario, the situation's changing. And to be fair to all of our international non-U.S. listeners, yes, you all have been doing this for years.
Yeah.
I acknowledge that. You're better than me. Congratulations. We're catching up.
And now when you come to Cuba, whoops, you're going to run into Americans.
Probably. There are a few of us here. It will be slowly growing. It's actually interesting news. Since we landed, they finalized the Havana route awards. Again, intermittent internet, I don't know that it's exactly what was announced tentatively, but I assume it was because I haven't heard any terrible protests from that. But yeah, it's coming. It's December 1, I think, is inaugurals for Havana service.
Wow, that's soon.
Yeah, very quick.
Considering it's September 1 today.
Yeah, so it's assuming the Cuban government approves it. I imagine they will.
Right.
But, so that's the line. The dot and the destination are going to be very similar. The dot, the Santa Clara airport, and the destination being sort of all of Santa Clara. Airport experience, rate at 1 through 10? Arrivals?
I mean, the facilities are like, it's not fancy.
Sure.
It's not fancy. You're not going to be walking into, blasting air conditioning or anything. But
moderate air conditioning,
there were, a lot of people employed there.
Yes.
So we waited in no lines. But also,
to be fair, half the plane didn't clear immigration.
Right, but also this is a special flight.
Right.
And the Secretary of Transportation flew in with us.
Yes.
And his jet was there to pick him up. So we were the only two airplanes on the ground.
Right. But I feel like for a lot of the non-Havana routes, that's going to be the case.
Yes, for the non-Havana.
For the non-Havana routes, your arrival will be, you are the only airplane on the ground. Santa Clara had a dozen immigration lanes, maybe 6 to 8 of which were staffed during this arrival, and maybe only 40 or 50 of the 125-ish passengers or 130 passengers on board actually stayed. So terribly overstaffed in that perspective, but I'd like to think, right, they've been doing WestJet, they've been doing Sunwings, they've been doing Air Canada Rouge, they've been doing these other airlines for so long. Or you said like Air Aruba flies here, I think?
Yeah, there was an Aruba airplane and an Instagram tagged to Santa Clara Airport.
Alrighty then.
So I don't know if that was, leased
oopsie?
for something, but
Yeah, look, there's a run
but
nice.
I do think that Veradero during the high season gets quite a bit of traffic.
Sure.
So it's
But
not
that is
just-
all.
yeah.
That's all beach resort. There's
Right.
a lot of Europe travel there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of.
That's the
Latin America
all-inclusive resort travelers.
travel. So there's no doubt that it can get a little crowded, but this particular experience, I would say, I mean, we're off season, but easy through, easy arrival. The airport is a little ways out of town. 20 minutes in a car.
Yeah,
probably.
that's a little ways.
Yeah, it's
Not a little ways.
no okay.
A little.
Little ways.
Yeah.
I have to work
All
on my
about the
intonation.
inflection there, yeah.
Yeah, it was very easy arrival experience. There is the currency conversion right when you get there, outside, around the corner, where it belongs, I suppose, which we almost didn't find for a few minutes. But so airport is fine. Obviously, we may have a different experience tomorrow when we try to leave, but
Right.
that'll be a different recording, I suppose.
But so when it came to the logistics of doing this trip, since we're here independently, we're not going with the tour group.
Yep.
We're here, as journalists, cultural travelers. We were able to make our own accommodation booking, decide where we wanted to eat, with whom we wanted to talk with, where we wanted to drink. What we wanted to see during the day was completely
Rum.
up to us.
Mostly rum.
Mostly rum. Except for today.
Except for today where it's mostly beer by accident.
Yes, we will get to that.
In a moment.
But so I went straight to Airbnb because I know that they have a great reputation when it comes to Cuba bookings, and that you don't have to go through the websites that require you to email for availability and then sometimes call days in advance to secure it. And I don't want to.
Yeah, well, that's what I did last year. It was
Yeah.
what I did last year was a Canadian travel agency that handled local bookings in Cuba, and I didn't have follow up calls. They tried to email me please confirm everything 24 hours in advance. I'm
Yeah.
I'm going to be in Cuba with no connectivity.
Right.
I'm going. Consider this paid, and they agreed and accepted it. But this was easier. There's no doubt.
Yeah. So I
And
just booked on Airbnb, and we are at what is
What?
considered the
the finest.
finest is a good word. The finest Casa Particular in town, which was $40 a night, which I think actually gets down to $25 if you go through, if you just walk up here and say, hey, can we
Interesting.
stay?
So
Yeah.
fair that they charge a premium
Yeah.
for the
convenience.
and the
Right.
handling of the bookings, but
Instant confirmation, breakfast included.
and
Yeah.
really quite nice. I mean, we're spending our second night up on their rooftop bar. It turns out they have Wi-Fi, which maybe they should or shouldn't.
Right. The owners are LGBT friendly,
But yes,
as well as LGBT.
yes. It's been a really interesting experience from that perspective. I would say, compared to my stay both in Havana and Cayo Coco last year, this has been a revelation, spectacularly pleasant compared to slightly stressful and a little, I don't entirely know. So I'm much happier this time around. And I think that extends beyond just the hotel to sort of all of the Santa Clara and the whole sort of Cuban experience this time around. I know it's your first time, so
Yeah,
you don't have the
it's my first
comparison.
time to Cuba. So I think, I was, of course, expecting something a little bit more Caribbean, but we're in the interior of the country here. We're almost equidistant from the north and south coast.
Yeah.
So our nearest...
And east and west,
Yeah,
dead center.
right. It's 3 hours by train to Havana, so people were asking, oh, you're going to go to Havana? No, I'm going to stay in Santa Clara.
Yeah.
The closest big city is Cienfuegos.
Right.
So, and that's
Which isn't that
2
close.
hours south of here.
So 8 kilometers, but 2 hours
Rocky
driving.
roads, yeah.
So there are some infrastructure challenges. And you mentioned train. We, today, during our walkabout, did in fact explore some of the train cars.
Yep, just kind of welded together train cars.
The floorboards were mostly solid.
Mostly.
Ish.
You could see the tracks through some of them.
It
They were together. It works.
didn't pull out while we were standing in it,
Right.
so
There
that's
was
a
no
bonus.
engine attached to the cars that we were walking in. They were just hanging out.
Yeah. It's not entirely clear there were engines available at all, in fact. We were there during a time where a departure was scheduled. No departure actually happened, but such is life. But even, that notwithstanding, the entertaining rail part of our adventures, I feel like just the experience in town here has been really casual.
Very casual.
This is a small town. I think population is 200,000 or so, which, I don't know, having just been in Iceland, and we were talking about that just a few minutes ago, the population of the country there is 300,000. And so that this town is almost that big. It's weird to say it's just a small town compared to that country.
Right.
But it's the size of Reykjavik. It's about 200,000, so same there. But to compare this in Reykjavik would almost be unfair. Now, this is nothing like Reykjavik. It's nowhere near as modern, but it's also sort of very comfortable, very easy, compact. I don't think all 200,000 live walkable
No,
from here. There's clearly
no.
sort of a suburbanish sprawl going on, but it's a very easy, sort of as a tourist especially, easy place to be.
This morning we had breakfast and a German family walked up to us and shared their birthday cake with us.
Yes.
Unprompted.
Unprompted. Well, I may have gushed over it.
Yeah, we said, ooh.
But to be fair, they shared it with the next couple who walked in who didn't see it, so it's probably just that they were being friendly. But yeah, I don't know, the whole experience has just been far more friendly and far easier than what I remember from Havana last year.
I feel very safe here.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, I have been walking around with Seth a whole lot, but there's been absolutely no catcalling or any kind of weirdness of that sort like you would get.
I don't feel like I've seen it either.
Yeah,
like,
I haven't seen any. Yeah,
we've seen plenty of women walking around wearing
every kind of thing.
Every kind of clothing.
From fluorescent lace tube tops.
That's the fluorescent tube tops.
At the airport.
That was a choice.
Short black skirts, super tight cover-ups,
Yeah. And it hasn't felt awkward in that context. I don't know, I feel like it's just a easy place to be. And Havana didn't feel that way to me a year ago. So I don't know, right? I know some folks have heard my sort of rants about Cuba and Havana from previous episodes and some of my other writings, and I don't know about this place. I don't know why people like it. I definitely like it more here.
You mentioned before the infrastructure being
infrastructure challenges.
Serious need of help.
In Havana, I still have concerns. As we said, there's, as of December 1, potentially 3,000 to 4,000 more people a day showing up. Here, there's some days, I think, when things ramp up, we're talking about 2 or 3 flights a day. So 500 people a day, call it. That's a lot for what the infrastructure has here as a tourism option. But if you're talking about sort of VFR traffic, right, visiting friends, visiting relatives, and business traffic, there is the one big hotel in town that can handle some of that. Obviously, if you're staying with family, you're staying with family. There's
2 destinations. They might not come to Santa Clara. They might go out to the Cayo Santa Maria.
Yes, that's true. From here, if you're going up to the beach, the North Shore, this is the airport you would go to for Santa Maria as well. There's a local airport there, but it only has service via prop from Cayo Coco or Havana. And it is a very tiny airport, one of the smallest I've ever been in, but actually a building as opposed to some I've been in. But yeah, so this does cover a certain section of the country, not just the local infrastructure, but I feel like this trip has been easier than Havana was. And you mentioned our Univision friend suggested that Santa Clara was a good starter.
Yeah.
Starter experience.
It's a prep, before you go into the bigger cities. Like you get kind of in tune with Cuban life and how to act and what the specialties of the culture.
Yeah. And I feel like we
just get attuned to it.
You do. And it's without the pressure, without the threat, without the challenges, the hassles. There have been, walking down the street, hey, taxi, but they leave you alone.
Little, though.
It's less of it, and they leave you alone when you say no. It really has been a much easier travel experience. So if you don't like the fighting over everything, sort of negotiations and this and that of travel, Havana might not be for you, but I feel like Santa Clara could work.
But there has been one hustle that we've noticed at the Parque Vidal.
Oh, the Wi-Fi hustle.
Yep.
Yes.
Do explain, Seth.
Wi-Fi costs money in Cuba. You have to buy a scratch card.
Everywhere. No, I mean, you can't stay in a hotel that comes with free Wi-Fi.
No, it simply doesn't exist, and it's a controlling of content and access for the world, so to speak. But telephone. So you go and you buy your scratch card, and then you get your access. And what's interesting is walking through the park in the city center. The big hotel right on the corner sells these scratch cards. And when I was in Havana last year, it was $6 for an hour of access. This year, it's $2 for an hour of access, which is a nice discount. It's coming down. It's not cheap necessarily yet, but it's coming down. We'll call it on par with in-flight internet. Mm-hmm. Better quality, generally speaking. It's actually been pretty fast.
Yeah, it's actually been pretty fast. I can't use no Snapchat, no Pokemon Go.
Well, I think Pokemon Go is a geo issue.
I know. I'm just laying it out. Don't come here
yeah.
expecting to play it.
If you're a pokey tourist, then I don't like you, number one, and number two, Cuba's not your choice. But yeah, so yes, no Pokemon Go, no Snapchat, which is a stranger situation, but we'll go with it. But so the cards were $2 an hour in the hotel, and we finally tonight, one of the guys walked up to us as we were walking through the park, like, hey, internet, Wi-Fi. And I asked him how much. Oh, $3. And I said 3 kooks, which is their local currency, which is on par with the dollar, except that there's a 10% penalty if you convert US dollars to kooks. And I laughed and said, but it's only $2 if I walk inside and buy it, right? He said, no, and then quickly ran away.
Yeah, he was like, oh, I've been caught out.
Yeah, so...
How do you reply to that?
part of me is a little surprised that they're only marking up that little bit. It's clearly not only him, and so I guess there's like collusion in the markup price. I don't know, but yes, if you don't pay attention, you can in fact overpay by 50% for Wi-Fi just out in the park in central Santa Clara. So the more you know. Go Joe.
But let's talk about the beer we drank today.
Yes. The beer was fine.
Yes. Well, okay, wait. So we were going to see some of the tourist sites, 90% of which here are affiliated with the Cuban Revolution and Che Guevara. So we were just kind of walking around on the northeast side of town, and we were hitting a couple sites and then looking for this place that we had heard of as a good spot for dinner. Then we round a corner, and I'm walking further out on the sidewalk than Seth is, and all of a sudden I see a Soviet helicopter right up the sidewalk in front of us.
Yeah, I feel like you saw the edge of the propeller hanging out. It was an Mi-8, right?
Yes, I believe.
A relatively large passenger helicopter, huge single prop, I guess, I feel like.
Yeah.
Not a huge helicopter, but like 12 or 14 passenger seats. Big bird. It turns out it was used for executive service carrying Fidel around, I guess. I mean, they didn't put his name on any of the signage.
It just said Jefe.
Yeah, executive travel for a few years. But yes, there was a helicopter. And so we walked past the restaurant very quickly. That wasn't the restaurant we meant to go to, but which is the restaurant we did end up going to. And as we were taking pictures of this crazy helicopter, I then waved at you and was like, no, there's more over here, and pointed.
Seth walked a little bit further,
and there was
he's like, Cynthia!
There's an Antonov An-24, which is an old Soviet prop plane. I thought I was actually going to get to fly on one of them last year when I did my Aerogaviota flights out here, and I ended up on an ATR-42 instead. So I was a little disappointed in that. But this one was on the ground, clearly not in flight condition. Mostly because they had installed a bar inside.
Yeah, well, we didn't find that out until we tried to get in the plane.
Yeah, we just wanted to walk inside wait, we see people, we should take photos.
We got up in the plane. It was like, oh my God.
So instead of seats, they had tables on both sides of the aisle. It was converted from passenger to cargo service, and then when they dragged it, I guess, across the road and parked it, I'm still trying to figure out how they got it where it is. Right. Because it's nowhere near an airport.
No. They would have had to roll it down the street and then up that ramp that it was on.
Which had runway lights.
It had runway lights on either side of it.
But yeah, we settled in, they converted it back out of cargo and put benches or booths in. And we had what was one of many language barrier discussions, I'll say, and tried to order some beer, and they told us, no, the only beer we have is warm, which we got out of our minimal Spanish.
Caliente.
Caliente, that's a pretty common one. And then one of the guys who just happened to be there tried to help us translate. I'm like, you have rum here. Do you have a cold soda to mix it with? No, the soda's also warm. Okay, fine. And what we got to is, if you want cold, we have draft beer. Yeah. And what they had was essentially towers, right? Beer towers, which I've seen the world over.
Yeah, like you'd find in a frat bar in Chicago or something, which is where I've seen them.
Okay, and so it's like a jug with an ice floater column down the middle and a spout on it, and you sort of draft, it's draft beer, and then you re-pour your own beer as the evening goes on. And there's markings on it for 1 liter, 2 liter, 3 liter. And they asked us how much we wanted, and I said 1 liter. I said it both in English and in Spanish. You heard me.
Yes, I was right there.
Armando, our Cuban friend, also heard me, and I'm convinced we just got punked by the wait staff. They charged us a arguably unreasonable amount.
Yep.
Compared to what beers had cost over the rest of our trip. It was $8. And I was like, okay, well that's high for a liter, but cool sight, cool experience.
It had really nice good glacial air conditioning. And we were sitting in the plane.
Yes, we're sitting in the plane. It didn't matter. I have photos in the cockpit sitting both left and right seat. It was incredible. And then the beer showed up, and it was in fact 3 liters.
They just filled it to the top.
They just kept filling it. And I tried every different means of math to convince us that it was less beer than it actually was. I failed at all of them. It's like, well, it's just 4 glasses per liter, which means that, nope, still a lot of beer.
But the good news is...
Armando helped us with a little bit.
Yes. We shared it with our Cuban friends that we just made. And we ended up finishing it all the way through. Yes. Came out with a nice buzz.
Yes.
And then went to dinner next door.
Yes. At what turned out to be a pretty good restaurant.
Yeah.
And dinner there was the whopping price of, I think, $7 or $8.50 all in, including me having mistakenly another beer. But yeah, it was this sort of crazy experience. I don't know, sitting in the An-24 was really, really cool.
If you can't get yourself to Cuba soon, there is another way to somewhat replicate the experience of sitting in an old Soviet aircraft and having a drink. Outside of Zurich Airport, there is a restaurant, and it's called I forget. It's called Hangar something. And inside of it is an old Ilyushin that's very close to the AN-24 that we were in today. And they've turned the inside of it into a bar. Or you can have a full dinner on tables underneath the aircraft.
Okay.
So they've made a glass hangar out of this as a restaurant.
Oh, nice.
And I just went there kind of because I had heard about it. But when I was there, they said, yep, flight crew comes here all the time.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go there and have
the
a
ultimate
dinner.
geek because you actually do it for a living. But.
It's across the runway from the terminals, and I think it's called Runway 24. So at the end of Runway 24.
Okay.
So, but if you Google it,
we'll try to look it up and put it-
Ilyushin Zurich restaurant, it'll come right up.
And we'll try to put a note in the show notes if I remember to do that tomorrow, but probably won't, so good on me. Yeah, no, there are options of that varietal around, but this one was unexpected, I feel like, is what made it so special for
It's not
us.
in any of the guidebooks or maps.
No.
Not marked anywhere.
Completely random, as far as that goes. And
What was inside of the helicopter, Seth?
oh, it's an ice cream shop for kids. And so it's funny, the sign says, if you're under, and this is my horrible Spanish translation, so I'm sure it says something else, but essentially, this is an ice cream shop for children under 12, please come inside. And we saw plenty of kids running up and down inside it. And in fact, Armando's son, about halfway through our jug of beer, came running over, face covered in chocolate ice cream. And I was able to say helado chocolato or whatever in my horrible Spanish, but more or less said ice cream and chocolate at the same time. And he acknowledged that I mostly got it right. And we laughed about it and was like, yes, my son is in fact covered in chocolate ice cream.
And he went straight to the cockpit.
He went straight to the cockpit and was pushing buttons and flipping switches and playing with the pedals and all those things. And me being me couldn't help but follow him up there and do the same. So I was also most of the way through 3 liters of beer. But I use that as a crutch. The reality is I just wanted to be up there.
Right, yeah.
Let's be perfectly honest here. It was, the helicopter's an ice cream shop for the kids, and the Antonov is a beer shop for the adults. And I feel like a perfect sort of counterbalance. Turns out that the kid who was, what do you say, 8 to 10 in that range, maybe?
His son?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say about 10.
10, yeah, he was a reasonably big kid, but felt completely comfortable running around on his own. He obviously got his own ice cream and dad paid for it and whatever. But it was nice. There was the place where the young kids could go doing their aviation thing and the big kids could go do their aviation thing with slightly different service behind the bar.
We did ask Armando what type of aircraft it was. He was like, Soviet Airbus.
Yes. He's not an av geek, it
right.
turns out. But such is life. Such is life. Favorites, other than drinking the Antonov, favorite site in Santa Clara so far? Keeping in mind that tomorrow we get to actually go inside the tobacco cigar factory, assuming we wake up in time.
Yeah. Okay, let me explain something that's not necessarily a favorite, but eye-opening. Is just the shopping, the way that shopping is conducted here.
Okay.
I went into a store to buy a Havana Club 7-year for my brother.
Let's be fair, you were trying to buy us lunch.
Yes, I went into a store trying to buy sandwiches, but we didn't totally know what was in the store. It was a store for some groceries, and mostly like soaps and shampoos, and like some jars of things. It was like a half grocery store, considering that the shop across the street sold water and ham.
Yes.
And that was it. But so I went in there and got some sparkling lime juice and my Havana Club, and it's just, everything is so segmented, and it's sometimes like you go in the water shops and the bottles of water are on display underneath a glass counter. So you tell them what you want. You don't grab it yourself.
Right. Everything's behind a counter.
Yeah. You tell them what you want, and they'll get it.
And you were saying this one you went to Bouillon Cubes.
Oh, yeah. So when I was purchasing my Havana Club, which was not behind the counter, and I could grab it off the shelf. And, yeah, there were very few items that you could just grab off the shelf, but rum was definitely one of them. But I was waiting forever. They were on Cuba time. So the cashier was checking out a lady 2 people in front of me, and she was requesting things from behind the counter. And one of her major purchases were about 10 bouillon cubes. Like they're like ice cube sized, individually wrapped soup stock makers. And she had to specify how many she wanted, and they got them out individually and counted and recounted. And then the man in front of me was using a credit card. He was Cuban. And he had to fill out a form that was presented like an invoice. So you write down individually each item that he's purchasing. He has to give his information on top of handing over the credit card.
And we saw that again.
Lengthy.
Yeah,
process.
that was in our time yesterday, and then again today at the cigar/rum/weird cafe shop. We saw the same thing. The guy in front of us, the first credit card didn't work. The second credit card did, and there was a lot of paperwork involved, and he had to show his passport and everything else. It was an involved process to make that happen. So, in theory, credit cards are sort of starting to work here. We haven't been in a position to try our cards yet, I feel like.
Well, we left ours behind the whole first day.
Yeah. And today I had a $1 purchase that I felt awkward trying to put on a credit card. But maybe tomorrow we'll see at the tobacco shop. But it's unclear that it will work. I think we've heard and his was a MasterCard. So it was a MasterCard. Flag card did work. But it's unclear that it's a U.S.
Okay.
I mean, it's not true. It's very clear it was not a U.S. bank.
Right.
I know it was not.
Oh, he was not American.
No. And it was not a U.S. bank card.
Okay.
So, we'll see. But yeah, that was, your shopping experience was an interesting one.
But we keep
mostly because I was stuck outside
yeah.
since I had a bag, and God forbid you go into a shop with a bag to put stuff in, because apparently that's not allowed.
Well, and in this store, they also had other cashiers. There was only one, apparently, for the groceries, so they directed me to that one. But if you were purchasing perfumes or nail polishes or any other cosmetics like that, you had that section, that counter had its own cashier. So you're saying
if you wanted to buy laundry detergent, it would have been a much shorter trip.
I don't know who the laundry detergent one went to cashier with, though.
Interesting.
There were 3 distinct cashiers.
Okay. And separate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So but there are some interesting challenges like that here, and I feel like that's a lot of, like, you can call it island time if you want, but it's even beyond island time. There's sort of we got this when we tried to go to the cigar factory today, which we'll now go to tomorrow. Like, we showed up and they're like, yes, did you buy your ticket already? And we said, no, what do you mean? No. And they said, yes, you have to buy it from the tourist shop in town. And so it's like 5 minutes away. It's not that far, but you have to go back in towards town and buy a ticket to get in. And it's like all the tour companies sell them, but they don't want to handle cash at the shop, so they make you buy it elsewhere. And it's like, and they sent us away. They were like, well, we can buy them here. Nope, not at all. So there's, it's interesting. But it works, but it's interesting.
But I'd say overall, I don't know if this is my favorite thing, but I really enjoy our casa here.
Yeah.
It's a pairing of casas. So there's one across the street, just called Hostel Florida Center, and they gave us a choice of rooms, and we chose across the street with the bar terrace on top. It also has Wi-Fi access, paid, of course, same deal as the rest of the city, but it's Hostel Florida Terrace, and I don't know, they've just been extraordinarily nice. They speak fine English.
Spectacular.
Yeah, the breakfast is massive.
Far too many carbs, by which I mean, I feel like it was 6 plates, each with cookies. 2 things on them of various cookies of different flavors and deliciousnesses.
But the 2 locations are full of antiques. And I mean, we're talking about antiques from like 1910 through 1950.
I'd call it pack rat chic.
Yeah.
None of the things seem like they work, but they're
Old
still
radios.
They're still all packed up and stacked up and everywhere in all the hallways and all the the foyers and all that. So it's interesting.
Lots of greenery, but the surprising thing is we have air conditioning.
Yeah.
And a refrigerator in our room that's stocked.
Yep.
On an honor bar system.
Which reasonably priced. I mean, I'm grading on a curve, certainly, but from like hotel pricing, but very reasonably. Like it's $1 for beers or bottles of water. So that's very reasonable in my world.
Ensuite private bathroom with towels and toilet paper, which I was warned that they might not have.
Yeah, I was warned that last year as well, and it wasn't a problem last year either for me on that trip. I'm not convinced that it's 100% not a problem yet, but
right.
I don't know.
We are staying in the nicest place.
We're staying in the nicest place, and I don't know. Part of me wonders, was it really not that much of a problem? Like, there were some people in some really random places that got screwed once. But there's a lot of countries I travel to where, I mean, I've told you this earlier this trip. Like, I have my roll of travel toilet paper, and it's been around the world several times with me. Rarely use it. Have used it once or thrice, and it's come in handy on those days I needed it. But it's not this sort of thing that I have to use all the time. So, I brought it with me last year to Cuba. I did not eat it then either. So,
okay.
Same roll.
That toilet paper has been to more destinations than many Americans.
I will agree with that statement. I should probably get it a passport and see where stamps it collects.
It's like what my brother likes to say about my cat, with whom I've flown with him sometimes, brought my cat on some flights to visit friends and whatnot. He likes to joke that my cat has more frequent flyer miles than his friends.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yep.
I mean, if cats could collect points.
Yep.
Alrighty, I think we're
They do on JetBlue.
They do?
Yeah.
Alright. Jet Pets or something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
Once you pay for it.
All set to Jet Pet.
Yeah. Jetson.
Yes.
Jetson. Once you're paying that much money, they like a couple extra bonus points. Seems like a very reasonable thing to do. I think let's call it so we can order another round of drinks here. Where can folks find you online, Cynthia?
I am all over the place.
Mostly?
Physically around the world, I'm all over the place. But online, I'm quite solid. So you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, don't Facebook me. So just those first three as @JetSetCD, JETSETCT.
Awesome. And you can find Dots, Lines, and Destinations online at dotslines or moredotsmorelines.com. Leave us a review. Leave us a comment. iTunes is mostly where you find us. I think there's a Facebook page and maybe a Google Play-ish thing too. I was told to do it once. Very
Google
suggestible.
Plus?
I don't think we did Google Plus. I think I drew the line there. Sorry. I have my
Nobody
limits.
does that anymore.
Anyways, have a great trip. If it's to Cuba, I hope you fit one of the legal categories, sort of like we do. And take care. Bye-bye.